Hello and welcome to our latest webinar, part 2 about assessments, very much looking at how we can help to support you. So the title of our webinar today is very much how Posturite can help to support you working more comfortably. And I'm going to be joined later with Vicky, who's one of our key members of our team. Before I do so, a few bits of housekeeping for you. We will be sending you a recording of this webinar afterwards that you can share with your colleagues, and it will also be available on our website. So please, if you're having any difficulties, don't panic, you'll be able to see it later. Please can you put any questions you have for us in the Q&A box. Now, obviously, we're going to be able to talk about general things today, but we won't be able to talk about specifics of your own setup. So please put your questions in the Q&A, and I'll be asking Vicky or answering them myself as much as I can at the end of this webinar. So really, before handing over to Vicky, I'd like to just remind everyone about the many ways in which Posturite try to help you with your workstation. And as you can see, we have various ways. So our website, I suppose, is our first sort of port of call. We try to make sure that there is lots of help advice and infographics you can download and advice sheets and blog articles. They're all kept on our website, and we'll show you towards the end where you can access those if you haven't found them. We're always looking for ways that we can help. So if you have any articles or any infographics you think that we should be including, please reach out to us and we'll see if we can create those for you. We have a live chat with our healthy working experts that Vicky will talk more about. Just a sort of bit of a spoiler is in the fact you get to interact with people and not bots. We don't use bots with our chat. So you'll be speaking to or hearing from Vicky a bit more. We obviously provide DSE workstation assessments, and we do that both in a face-to-face and in a remote fashion, depending on the needs and the requirements and the desires of the people who have the assessments. And obviously, we can also do DSE compliant assessments, not just ones that are focused on problems. If people have more specific needs, we are able to offer higher level assessments, and these are undertaken by people who are either ergonomists or health professionals with an ergonomics bias. So we very much can look at that. We also do look at enabling other people with needs to work. So this is where an enablement service comes in, looking more at the neurodiversity or the visual needs. So again, looking very much at empowering people to work effectively and comfortably. And in fact, you know, all our team are passionate about ergonomics. And so if you ever got any questions, if your assessments needs or your advice needs don't fit into any of these categories, please reach out to our team for support. So really, not wanting to take up any more airtime, I'm going to introduce you to Vicky now. Now, Vicky is a senior product specialist and CIEHF accredited DSE assessor. She's been with Posturite for 14 years. And after 9 years on the road as an assessor, she moved into a senior advisory role, using that experience that she gathered to assist clients and individuals with advice about display screen equipment, computer workstations, and provides very valuable ergonomic product help and other assistance to our clients via our website chat function. So Vicky, if you'd like to sort of come on screen and take over from me and explain what you do and the sort of things you get asked. So over to you, Vicky.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and good morning, everybody. Apologies in advance for any coughing and sniffling that I do, as I'm just coming back from a nasty cold there, so I'll try and mute wherever I can. So as Catherine mentioned there, Posturite can offer DSE workstation assessments and advice, but what exactly is DSE? So just to give you a really brief overview of the basics, it stands for display screen equipment, but basically means anything you're using in terms of your equipment at your desk. So your keyboard, mouse, screen, chair, etc. Companies will provide a DSE assessment that's required for compliancy to the DSE regulations by law, but this may just be the more basic checklist assessment. Some companies do go a little further than that, but they may do the more basic one that primarily checks what equipment you already have and whether this is compliant, and it's not specific to you and whether that equipment is suited to you or your needs, although it can flag up these issues. So a Posturite DSE assessment is more of what we would call a problem-solving assessment that would generally be completed after that standard checklist assessment has been done. And if there are any issues that are flagged up with comfort or any issues using your equipment that came from that assessment. So it's much more specific to the individual and your needs. You don't have to wait for DSE self-assessment time to roll around within your company. You can have a Posturite assessment anytime in terms of any aches and pains that crop up throughout the year. So if you're experiencing any discomfort or pain with use of any of your equipment, the best thing to do initially would be to speak to your employer, as it's quite likely they already have a process in place with how to escalate that, which more often than not is actually referring to us anyway. But double check their process, and we can always provide an assessment that will look at suggesting alternative equipment if required. Because a change in equipment may allow you to work more comfortably and more efficiently. So it's really important to raise any issues that you're experiencing within your organization, first of all, as soon as possible, rather than waiting for it to get worse. If you've got a bit of a niggle in your elbow that seems to get worse when you're using the mouse, don't wait to raise that. And if you're an individual, you don't have to come to us via a company. For example, if you're self-employed, you can absolutely come to us directly to book those assessments for you if you want to do that via our website. Have the next slide, please. So in terms of booking and undergoing the assessment with us, what actually happens? So initially, your company or yourself, if you're booking as an individual, will refer you to us. And if you were on the webinar earlier in the week, you would have seen Paul showing off our new assessment referral and booking system. Super, super sleek, and a lot of time and effort has gone into that to make it really efficient and user-friendly for you. As the appointee, the person who's going to have the assessment, you will then receive a booking invitation link by email to choose your preferred date. We'll offer the soonest that we have, and then a variety of options to choose from after this date if that doesn't work for you. This will initially be a window of between 9 and 3, and we'll come back to that in a moment. So as previously mentioned, we offer both remote and face-to-face assessments, which we can do at either your home or in an office location. So it doesn't have to be within the office. If you've chosen the face-to-face assessment, there's nothing else you need to do prior to the date of the assessment itself. If you selected a remote assessment, you will need to provide us with photos of your workstation and measurements of yourself to help us make an informed decision on any items that may work for you. And that's with regards to kind of the whole environment, as well as your personal needs and your dimensions. We asked for this prior to the assessment because while it is a video call, when we're doing the remote assessments, it is really difficult to see what we need to during a video call, and you're trying to kind of point the camera at all angles and moving your laptop webcam so we can try and see you in the chair. It's really difficult to see what we need to see. So it's really important to provide us with those photos so we can see what we're discussing during the assessment and see the whole environment just as we would do with a face-to-face assessment in terms of your chair, your desk, and everything else around you. If there isn't anyone at the time to help you take photos, a phone camera on a timer works great. You just need to kind of put the timer going and then jump into the chair and make sure you're in the picture. You also want to make sure your setup is exactly as it would normally be in the photos. So where is your notebook normally? Or any documents that you're referring to? Where's your keyboard and mouse? Do you normally have them a little bit wonky? We need to see what it's actually like so we can hopefully potentially improve on that for you. And we provide guidance on what photos and measurements we need from you once you've booked that date. The day before the assessment, you'll then receive a notification of a smaller window. So as I said, at first we have a kind of a bigger window, which is when you initially book, and then we narrow that down to a smaller window, much closer to the time of the assessor's expected arrival time. What that allows us to do is really optimize the assessor's time in terms of efficiency, but also in an environmental capacity as well, to make sure we're doing as little mileage as possible between each assessment and that the day flows really well. Then on the day of the assessment itself, we'll give you updates as to when we're on our way, usually around about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on where the assessor's previous assessment was. And then we'll also let you know once we have arrived. And in terms of a remote assessment, that will be a ping to say, we're about to start up the video call, please join. And then during the assessment itself, so the assessor is going to discuss your role with you, how you're using your equipment and what you need your equipment to do to be able to perform your tasks. So for example, are you referring to lots of paperwork and you're copy typing things into the screen? Is it more mouse-based because you're using design programs like CAD? Is it lots of typing up of minutes? Or maybe you're on the phone a lot of the day and you're holding the handset and trying to type with one hand. We've all seen it. We will also discuss any aches and pains that you have and how that maybe ties into use of the equipment. The assessor will then also try to adjust any equipment that you currently have where possible. We always want to leave you more comfortable at the end of the assessment than you were at the start. So if we can do so, it might just be really simple quick fixes like raising the height of your monitor on a stack of books if it's too low for you, or adjusting the height of your chair, for example. If it's a face-to-face assessment, we'll then take the photos and measurements that you would already have provided us with if it were a remote assessment. And then following the assessment, the assessor will write up a report with all that gathered information and their observations and make suggestions for equipment that may be of benefit to you and a justification as to why that would likely be more suitable than the equipment that you currently have for your employer. The report is then sent back to your employer or whoever referred you. So that might well be yourself if you booked the assessment with us directly. And then the report is going back to the person who would be responsible for taking any action points forward, such as purchasing any equipment if necessary, or making adjustments to your workstation that have been suggested in that assessment. So that's a real general overview of what to expect, right from choosing the date up to having had the assessment, and then it's over to your employer to take anything forward. Go to the next slide, please. So what if you don't need a full assessment, or maybe you're not sure if you do? Perhaps the issue is a bit more minor, or you're looking for some advice on how to get the best setup for you to prevent any future issues or recurrence maybe of previous issues, or you're looking for help choosing between some products. Perhaps you've already decided that you need a certain type of product, but there's quite a different range of choice on our website and you're not sure what you need. This is where our DSE Advice live chat can come in really handy. So it's on our website between 9:30 in the morning and 4:30 in the afternoon, Monday to Friday. And as Catherine mentioned, unlike a lot of companies, it is not a bot. It is real life humans straight away. And in terms of the DSE advice channels on the website live chat, it's usually myself and my colleague Gareth. So our live chat is used by individuals who are just getting themselves set up, employees who've been directed to our website by their company, and those responsible for DSE related queries within their company as well. So people like occupational health professionals or health and safety professionals. We answered nearly 10,000 live chats between us in 2022, and we're looking to break that by a considerable margin by the end of this year. So that's a whole lot of people that we've been able to help with immediate answers via the live chat. Myself and Gareth have also been here for a considerable amount of time, so we have a wealth of experience to draw on in terms of helping with advice on your workstation. We can help you with choosing an assessment type if you're not sure whether a remote or a face-to-face assessment is suitable for you. Potentially, maybe you need a high-level assessment for the issues you're facing, or maybe it comes under more of an enablement umbrella, as Catherine mentioned previously. So this can also act a little bit like a triage, because if it's something that we can help you with remotely via the chat for free and you don't need an assessment, we will absolutely help you on the live chat there to save you time. If you don't need the assessment, then we'll absolutely help you with that. We don't have any sales targets. We don't have anything that we need to meet in terms of that. So if we can help you for free, we're absolutely going to do that. We'll make suggestions for mild to moderate pain via the chat, for example, keyboards and mice, but also chairs and desks for sort of more of a basic issue. If, for example, you just need a chair that has a deeper seat depth than your current chair because you're particularly tall, or perhaps just some extra lower back support if you feel like it's lacking in your current chair. If we do need more information to be able to help you before we kind of say, actually, this maybe needs an assessment, we may take it offline and ask you for some more measurements, potentially some photos or some more background information to make sure we can help you to the very best of our ability via the chat without needing to refer you on for that assessment. However, if it is needed and we feel like an assessment is really going to be of benefit to you, we will suggest that to you. So it is a triage of sorts. And we can also help you with troubleshooting your equipment and getting your equipment set up. So if you've got some new items, new keyboard and mouse, you're not too sure how to use that, you can absolutely come on the live chat and we'd be more than happy to help you with that. Perhaps you've had your adjustment of your new chair, but you've forgotten what the levers do. Or maybe your mouse has some programmable buttons. How do I use those? Or even just general setup advice for like, I'm not sure how high my screen needs to be compared to my eye level, or how do I adjust the height of my chair? And we can also help with choices between different makes and models of chairs, desks, and peripherals, like keyboards and mice, for example. Because we are independent, we have a whole host of options on our website, and they might all initially look pretty similar, but some of them might actually be better suited to you than others. And so we can really help to narrow that down for you. The next slide, please. So to give you some of the ideas of the queries that we're fielding day to day, I've got some examples here and how we would tend to approach them. So firstly, with regards to sit-stand desks and platforms, we have a wide range available on our website, and they're all different sizes and measurements. So an individual will often ask, will this platform fit on my desk? And so if they haven't already, we would ask them to measure their existing desk so we can double check those measurements for them. And is it going to be suitable and stable? Because we need to make sure that the entirety of the base of the sit-stand platform is on the desk for safety. For taller users, they may ask, is this desk platform actually going to be tall enough for me in terms of the height range that it offers? And this is very much what we call the standing elbow height. It's dependent on that height, as you can see here in the image. You want your forearms to be around about parallel with the desk and your elbows at about 90 degrees between your forearm and your upper arm when you're typing. And that's general good posture for both sitting and standing working posture. So in terms of how high the desk needs to be, when you're standing, the underside of your elbow is a really good gauge of that in terms of height. So we'd be asking that individual to take that measurement from the floor to the elbow so we can double check that it's going to suit them. We're also regularly asked, will this desk platform fit all of my equipment on it? You know, I've got 3 really big screens. Is this going to work? Unfortunately, without seeing it and knowing the size of your screens, I'm not going to be able to advise on that without a little bit more info. So we would ask that person to pop the equipment side by side where it's going to be on the desk, and then measure the overall footprint. So from the far left of it to the far right of it, including all of that equipment, and then we can make sure that it's going to fit on the given space. Particularly for people working from home infrequently and they maybe don't have a setup that's permanent and they're working more from a makeshift kind of desk, like a dressing table or a smaller built-in counter that tends to be a little bit shallower in depth compared to an office desk. It's really key that we have the measurements there to make sure that where they're intending to use it, the sizing is going to be suitable both for their equipment, but also for it to be safe and fully secure on the desk. On to the next slide, please. Another very common question we get is which additional back support will be best for me? So maybe they're looking to add something to their chair temporarily rather than replacing the chair. Maybe they need a little bit of extra lower back support or a bit more cushioning, for example, after an injury. This is going to be very much dependent on the current chair that you're using and how the back support is going to attach. So for example, the dining chair you can see here in the image on the right, there's a big old gap in the back of the backrest there. So if you were to use the back support on the left there, that requires something to be behind it, it needs to rest against something to give you that support. It's just going to fall straight through the back of the chair. So if you're using a chair, something like this very temporarily, and you're just adding a bit of extra support to it, we're going to need to know how it attaches and what the backrest of the chair looks like. It also depends on the curvature of your current chair. So even if you're using an office chair that has a solid back, what you don't want to do is add further support to the chair that ends up being too much. As you can see, this person here has got great lower back support now, but isn't touching the upper section of the backrest because it's shunted them forward on the seat. So while you want to add further support, you don't want it to be a detriment to anywhere else. So what will really help here is a photo of the chair that you're using or that you're intending to put the external support onto, so we can have a look at the options for you and make sure it's going to suit. And not only does it depend on the chair itself, but of course, everything comes back to the individual. So if you have a particularly deep lumbar curve, you're probably going to need a bit more support in the lower back than somebody without. Maybe your chair is actually too curvy for you and you're wanting to counteract some of the curves of the chair and add a bit of back support onto that to maybe make it a little bit flatter so it suits you better. So it's really important that we can see what you're currently working with and ideally a photo of you in that chair so we can see where there is anything lacking so we can make sure that we're advising you correctly. The next slide, please. Another very common question is which chair is most suitable for someone who's petite or someone who's tall? And my first question, oh, that started already. My first question is always going to be how tall are they? And you wouldn't believe the number of times people say, I just need a chair for a tall person. I don't know how tall they are. In terms of a suitable chair, our chairs are very adjustable in terms of the seat depth adjustability and the backrest height adjustability to suit a wide range of users. But the best chair for somebody who is very petite or very tall is very much dependent on the individual, always comes back to the individual and where their height is in terms of the ratio between the upper leg, the lower leg, and their torso. Because two people who are both 5'7" could have very different measurements in those ratios, or someone much taller than someone else can actually end up having the same torso length, but different leg lengths. And this video here just highlights that in a little bit of a funny way, if we can start that.
If I'm 5'4" and Vlad is 6'1", how are we the same height sitting down? This makes no sense.
So you can see here that while they're very different overall heights, when seated, their torsos are actually around about the same. So this would suggest that Vlad in the video here, in terms of where his height is, it's primarily more in the leg. And so maybe is going to need a much deeper seat compared to somebody else who's also 6'1", but is taller in the body. So that's where measurements are really, really key. I will often get people saying, what's the best chair for someone who's 5 feet tall? And there's absolutely no way for me to know without measurements there. In particular, for somebody who's really petite, the seat size is really important to get right, because if the seat is too big for you, even literally just by a couple of centimeters, you're not going to be able to sit right back into the chair and bend your knees. So you end up seeing a lot of petite users then kind of perching on the edge of the seat because the seat is just ever so slightly too big. So that measurement is really, really key. And that's what we'll be asking for in these sort of situations where it's people at the extremes of both petite and tall. Next slide, please. So we have an extensive range of laptop stands on our website that can cater for pretty much all different laptop sizes and different height ranges that you need the laptop to be around about your eye level. And one of the most common questions we get is which laptop stand is right for me, because we do have such a whole host of options. At this point, we would have to question, does your laptop have a rigid hinge between the screen and the keyboard? So that's something that we will ask literally every person who's looking for a laptop stand, because a lot of the laptop stands don't support the screen itself. It relies on that tension between the keyboard and the screen to keep the screen open. And the trend with a lot of laptops now is that it's actually a tablet with a little keyboard attached to it. So something like the Microsoft Surface in the image here, where you can actually detach the keyboard and then it's a tablet. So a standard laptop stand is just not going to work for you here because it's just going to fall straight off. So here you would need to actually use a tablet stand and take the keyboard off it. Another question we'll ask is, where are you going to be using this? Is it going to be needing to be portable? Do you need to have it something that folds down really small because you're moving it around from different locations? Or is it just going to be used in one place? Are you working from home all the time and you need something just to pop your laptop on? Because each type is going to have different features. So again, another key question to make sure that we're getting the best option for you. Next slide, please. And then finally from me, we'll often be asked for a ergonomic mouse, which is the best ergonomic mouse. And this often comes from somebody's physio or maybe their chiropractor who says, you need to get an ergonomic mouse for this issue that you have, but they don't specify a type. And this happens very frequently. So a super duper basic definition of the word ergonomic is that it relates to the design of equipment or furniture to be comfortable and effective for that person using it. So that means, yet again, it's really specific to the individual. So if something's comfortable for you and effective for you, it may not be for the next person. So that's basically what ergonomic means. It's designed to suit an individual rather than a one size fits all. So if you ask for an ergonomic mouse, they're kind of all ergonomic, but all to different people. So we need to ask a series of questions to try and determine what's going to be the best option for you. So that may be, whereabouts are you getting the pain? If it's just in your wrist, or is it also in the fingers? Do you have any elbow discomfort or shoulder symptoms as well? And also specific movements in particular with the mouse that they might be really uncomfortable with clicking and dragging, or it might be scrolling and how they're physically using the mouse rather than just hand position. And this way we can really narrow down what is going to work best for you specifically. Maybe it's a vertical mouse, maybe it's a roll bar mouse that are both shown in the images here, but potentially it's something entirely different. But to make sure we're getting the right mouse for you, we're going to need to make sure we have a lot more information. And that's what live chat is all about, is trying to narrow things down for you as much as possible on our website, making sure you're getting the best option for you and asking as many questions as we need to help you get to that point. Thank you very much, and back to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Vicky. I think, you know, I think that covered things very well. So yes, I've got all sorts of thoughts whilst you were doing that. So that's great. But what I wanted to sort of come back to is I sort of started off at the beginning, sort of saying that we have lots of different ways of providing advice. And I think sometimes I do get to, well, I know you do, but I can't find it. So I thought we'd use this slide just really to show people, if you go to our website, you find all these resources under the advice and inspiration tab that you can see on the far right of your screen. And then you get the drop down, and then you can see that we have the tips, advice and reviews in part, the help to buy buying guides. Then we've got some particular ideas, you know, as in the small office. We've got a sort of question about that, which I hope if people look at that tab for office ideas, they will see what's available. And then we've got, you know, your healthy working hub, where there is a lot of information. So if you haven't visited any of these sites on our website, I would suggest you do so, because there's a lot of good information there. Next slide, please. As Vicky has said, you know, the advice team is available during the live chat. So, you know, please reach out and look at that. If you go onto our website, it'll pop up at the bottom of the screen. And if on listening you think, well, actually, I do need an assessment, we've actually got an offer that will be emailed to you afterwards, but you'll see the code on the screen now, to encourage you to try our assessment service and see actually if it makes a difference. So please feel free to use that discount code. Now, we ran a poll at the beginning. So whilst you're thinking of questions and popping them in the Q&A box, let's just have a look and see what was answered. So the first question of the poll was, have you ever bought your own work equipment? And do you know what? 60% of people have said they have, which is, I think, is quite amazing. I think it's great. It means that people care about their own health and safety, their own comfort. And if they're not getting what they need from their workstations, they're doing that. So that's good to know. How many people have used the live chat facility? Gosh, only 17%. Now, I think that's going to go up dramatically after this webinar. So hold on, Vicky. I think they're coming for you. 31% have obviously used it in the past, but not for a while. So again, but we've got 51% who've said they've never used it. So as I say, hold on tight. I think people will be very much interested to know they can get a lot of this advice and a lot of their questions answered. So so that's quite interesting.
I'll be prepared.
You be prepared. I think you'll need to be. So yes, spinach in the morning. And it's good to see about how people access our free resources. And there seems to be quite a good uptake, particularly of the infographics and the advice sheets. So that's good, but keep on letting us know of other things that we could help you with, and we will try and produce those for you. And last, but by no means least, how people choose their workstation purchases. Well, do you know what? I'm really pleased to hear or see that 60% of you choose your products by speaking to product specialists. That's really heartening to know that actually we're hopefully providing the right advice and getting to the nub of it for you. So that's really good. Word of mouth at 46, that again is useful to know if something has worked for somebody and they can explain. So that's, I think, very heartening, those poll results. So I'm really pleased to see that. So thank you for answering those for us. Now, let's have a look at the Q&A. Now, we did have a question that was submitted in advance, and I think this is a very pertinent one for you, Vicky. Do you think a remote assessment is sufficient for a home worker in most cases?
Yes, absolutely. So our remote assessments and our face-to-face assessments are actually at the same level in terms of the depth. So if we are seeing you face-to-face, we can obviously observe things a little more easily. But if it's a remote assessment, we may need to ask you a few more questions to kind of describe how you're using things rather than being able to kind of visibly see it, unless, of course, you provided some excellent photos and that shows everything beforehand. But because we always make sure we get that further information, we've always got the photos, we've always got the measurements, it's actually really helpful, really easy for us to help in a remote way, and we'll do absolutely everything that we can do to help you in a remote environment. So I think that's absolutely fine in terms of a home worker, particularly if they've already got stuff in the office and maybe they're just looking to see if the home needs something to be replicated, for example. Having a face-to-face assessment might be a bit of a waste of your time, and a remote assessment can usually be done a lot more quickly as well. So I don't see any reason why there couldn't be a remote assessment, unless there was some difficulty with taking the photos or taking the measurements, because as I say, they're really key. If we don't have those, we really can't recommend anything without seeing the issues. So yeah, as long as you provide some great photos and measurements and are nice and open and honest and on the call, then absolutely we can help you remotely in the same way we can face to face.
And I would imagine if for some reason you were thinking, do you know what, I'm not confident about what I'm saying, or I need some more, you'd discuss it with them, and you would then recommend, what was needed to do to resolve the problem if for some reason you couldn't do it remotely, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if it is something that actually we really need to come out and see you on this, then yes, we would then be saying, I think we need to kind of escalate this to a face-to-face. But I would say probably 9 times out of 10, absolutely everything is fine to be also done remotely, just because of how in-depth our assessments are, and having that kind of background information beforehand, it works really, really well.
Okay, that's great. Right, we have a question come in. I'll take this one if you don't mind. So it says, do you offer training for those who want to become DSE assessors? Well, we used to, but we actually have stopped doing this now as a specific course, because our focus is very much on supporting people with problems. But what we can do is if people need advice, if DSE assessors need advice, or you've got people who are resolving issues within their companies, we absolutely provide advice and education, both face to face and online. So small sessions to support people who are resolving problems for people absolutely is key to our business. We've really found that people have adapted the way they support people, particularly I think over COVID now, and that the DSE assessment that was, as Vicky talked about, the compliant assessment, which is what the DSE assessor course generally focused on, is not as pivotal to people these days because it can be done in so many other ways. So many people do DSE assessments online, but where people need the help is resolving issues. And absolutely, we provide education and support for people resolving issues. Just reach out and talk to us and tell us what you need, and we'll look to see if we can provide it for you. Okay, little personal. Vicky, what's your favorite product?
My favorite product.
Favorite
Wow,
product to
my favorite
recommend,
product.
or favorite product?
I would have to say the Contour Uni Mouse, because this is a vertical mouse, but you can adjust how vertical it is. So a vertical mouse can be great for if you've got wrist issues and elbow issues or anything in the forearm, and it keeps the forearm and the wrist and the hand all in a straight parallel line rather than turning your hand palm down, which can kind of be aggravating to those issues. But some people do find that going from a completely flat mouse to completely vertical is really difficult, just because it's so different. Even if it's a better posture, sometimes it can be uncomfortable simply because it's different. So the Uni Mouse allows you to kind of do that in stages and also find the most verticality that's really comfortable for you. And it also comes in left and right and wired and wireless. So it's a huge range of options for people, as well as being able to kind of tailor the position. So I'd say that's something I go for more often than not if somebody's coming to me with those symptoms.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, one thing that very much hit me as you were talking, obviously we see a lot of people who've got products and they're just not quite working for them, and quite often I will advise them to come to yourselves. I mean, do you get a lot of people who've got equipment but it's not really working for them, with the simple adjustment helps? Is it worth reaching out? Am I doing the right thing and telling them to come to speak to you?
Absolutely, yes. So a lot of people will see on our website we've got things called document slopes, and that you can pop your document on so it's closer to eye level and it's on an angle, so it's much easier than viewing it flat on the desk. But you wouldn't believe the number of people who buy them on the website and don't understand that it goes behind your keyboard, and they're kind of putting it at the side and kind of twisting and turning. So they've got the right equipment, but they're just not using it in the right way to get the best out of it. So I would then be saying, no, that goes behind your keyboard there, so everything's nice and in line, and then you can have your keyboard much closer to the edge of the desk rather than reaching over your notepad to make a note. So sometimes it's little tweaks in things like that as well. Have you thought about bringing your phone a little bit closer because you're constantly reaching out for the phone? Have you got a headset and you're not using it, and maybe you should because you're kind of doing this all day on the phone? And it can just be really simple advice like that, but it can make a really big difference to have a fresh pair of eyes look at your desk and say, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Am I getting the best out of this equipment I've been provided with as well?
Yeah, I think that's obviously over the years has been one of my greatest frustrations is, a lot of people, particularly with back problems or neck problems, and you advise a chair and then they phone up and they go, oh, it's not working. And you see them sitting on this chair and it's been poorly adjusted and you go, you've put good investment and you're not getting it out of it. And I know that it was often with some simple adjustments, and I'm sure you talk a lot of people through what the adjustments on the chair do and how to do it. And so you actually get the benefit of what you've bought rather than, rather than just thinking, oh gosh, well, that didn't work. I think chairs are particularly difficult sometimes, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. You can have the best chair in the world, but if it's not adjusted correctly for you, again, coming back to that individual, that chair will work probably for quite a lot of people, but it will need to be adjusted in a different way for every person. So you might need to bring the seat depth out a little more if you've got a slightly longer leg, and otherwise you kind of feel like you're perching on it. You maybe need the backrest angle slightly different or the height different to make sure the curvature fits you. So while the chairs are kind of fully adjustable and suit a wide range of people, it's really got to be that adjustment to make sure it's suitable for you. And it can be, again, kind of a couple of centimeters of a tweak, and it makes such a massive difference. So if you're not sure what a lever does on your chair, don't accidentally find the ejector seat button. We've hidden those on a few of the chairs. But if you aren't sure what the lever does, then please do come on the live chat and ask, even if it's not our chair. If you just need something to be, help with your adjustments on that, we're more than happy to help you work out what all the levers do and make sure you're as comfortable as possible.
I mean, it comes down to, no question is a stupid question. And that I suppose it's just such a difference because we are passionate about what we do and we want people to get the best out of our products, and having, yourself and the rest of the team available, I think just makes so much of a difference to getting the solution to work correctly for you, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So, brilliant. We've got a question about what compact keyboard would you recommend, or is there a more popular one? Oh, there's an interesting one. I mean, I love compact keyboards, but any particular thoughts on why you would choose one over another, maybe?
Yeah, so really it's going to be kind of how you're working. So a mini keyboard is great if you're not using a number pad. If you are using a number pad, you might miss it quite a bit. So that's always something to kind of factor in. In terms of the mini keyboards themselves, how they attach to your computer is different. So there are some wireless ones that have a dongle that attach. So you've got to have a free USB slot for that. Some of them are specifically just Bluetooth. So your computer has to have built-in Bluetooth for that. So that's something to kind of have a consideration of just in the kind of the spec of the keyboard itself. But also they have slightly different sizes on the keys. So someone, maybe if there's kind of a little bit of a dexterity issue, you might want a larger key rather than a smaller key. If you've got any issues in the fingers, you may want something that's a little more soft touch rather than kind of a more kind of clunky old style keyboard. Not that we do clunky ones, but that kind of that kind of thing. You want to make sure that it's right for your fingers as well. So it's really going to come down to kind of what you need it to do and what your needs are. But in terms of sort of one of our most popular ones, I would say is the number slide keyboard. It does have the pull out number pad. So if you do miss that, then that's great, but you can pop it away when it's not in use. And then you can keep your mouse in closer still. So I'd say that's probably one of our most popular ones, but again, it's not going to work for everybody. So if you're not sure if it will, live chat is there and we'll be more than happy to talk through the options with you.
I mean, I love a compact keyboard. But actually for those people who use numbers quite a lot, I quite like having the separate numeric pad too, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because then you can move things around your desks, and obviously you talk to people about that too, wouldn't you?
Yes, absolutely.
We've got a question about, do we have a soft light touch keyboard that would suit somebody with arthritis?
It will very much depend on if there are any abnormalities in the finger positioning. So with arthritis, often there can be sort of a kind of a grip position that's started or an abnormality in the shape of the finger. So that's something we would really want to consider. We do have a great soft touch keyboard on our website called the Matthias or the Matthias. I'm not sure how you say that, but I've used that one myself and it's really, really soft. So a lot less pressure is going through the fingers itself. It does, however, have the number pad. So if there's also issues there with keeping the mouse in closer, we'd maybe want to have a look at something else. But as a sort of a good go-to initially, the Matthias is really, really good for that, just because of how soft it is.
Yeah, I think we have quite a good range, and actually keyboard design is quite an interesting thing about, do you want auditory feedback or physical feedback, and then that sort of thing. We do have a range, which, as I say, obviously you can discuss with people, and I would suggest that if you have any particular needs, actually speaking to the team is exactly what we can do. You tell us what your needs are, and we're able to sort of match it up quite well.
Yeah.
So we've got one here. Oh gosh, they're coming in quite thick and fast here. Okay. According to my experience, equipment like Meltron one-handed keyboards is not very widely used for people with use of one arm only. I think that's probably more of a statement. Have you any particular thoughts on one-handed keyboards, Vicky?
They are very different in how you use them. So it's a bit of a learning curve in kind of how you do that. The positioning is great kind of once you've got used to it, but a lot of people do find it really difficult to get to grips with. So what I will often recommend is they first try a mini keyboard, but just over to the left or the right. So whichever hand they're using, they might be a little bit more intuitive to actually use just one hand and still typing in the same way that they would do before. So something like the Meltron keyboard, the keys are all in a different orientation, and it's a very different way of using it. So if that's something that they want to try, then great, but just bear in mind there might be a little bit of that accommodation period where they're not used to where everything is. But maybe try just a mini keyboard over to the side that they're using. They might find that that's a lot easier, particularly if it's a short-term issue. You know, they've got a broken arm. You don't really want them to invest all this time in working out how to use a weird and funky keyboard if it's only going to be a few weeks. They can probably get through with a mini keyboard instead.
Okay. We've got a question really saying, do we have pictures of the different keyboards? Because people are struggling because they don't know them. We don't, and that would be difficult for us to do right now. However, I mean, we are thinking about, we often do webinars about different types of products, so we might be able to do that for you. If you've got any ones you particularly would like us to do, we can send you some pictures. There's stuff on our website. Or actually, if after this this call you wanted to reach out, you know, to Vicky and the team via the chat, you know, then they could discuss the specifics with you and show them to you. It's just be difficult for us to get the keyboards up here now on this webinar, but it's a very good point, and thank you for raising it. And we will try and make sure that we do discuss keyboards and provide pictures, perhaps on another webinar. But also, there's some very good pictures and things on the website. But the team will talk to you about specifics and show you the items if you reach out to them. So sorry we can't do that right now, but I think we can you know, perhaps try and help that in the future. I think really probably we're running out of time, but probably the last one. How do we feel about the roller mouse contour keyboard? Okay, I'm just trying to bring that one to mind.
It would be the balance keyboard, I think we call it, the one that's designed by Contour. Yeah.
Yes, I think so. Vicky, any particular thoughts? I mean, it's all about the person, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It works perfectly with the roller mice because it's made by the same company, but you don't have to use the same keyboard. It's absolutely fine to use a non-proprietary keyboard because the roller mice come with the little adjusting feet to make sure your keyboard is the same level. So while it works perfectly with it, it's not the only choice. You don't have to buy that keyboard specifically if you're using a roller mouse. Having used it myself, it is a pretty nice soft touch keyboard. So as an overall keyboard, I think, yes, it's a great choice, but it's not a necessity if you're using a roller mouse.
Yeah, and I think a roller mouse is very much I mean, I would call it a Marmite product. You know, some people take to them very well. I have to say, personally, yeah. I actually struggle using a roller mouse. I am you know, but I often do recommend them. So I mean, it's very personal thing. I think probably it's the last of the questions, but I'm just going to answer Tracy's question about, do we provide chairs on a try before you buy? We don't, unless it's part of a very large project. But we do a 14-day sale or return on our standard chairs. So if it isn't for you, then you can return it. I mean, because they are a big investment and they need to work for you. So please, you know, although we can't send them out to try, we do the sale or return. So I think really that is, I think that's really all we've got time for today. So Vicky, thank you so much. I do think you need to probably go and get yourself a cup of coffee and strap yourself in, because I do think that you're going to get a lot of questions and queries. But that's great, because it is all about getting people more comfortable, you know, less likely to develop problems. And if we can maximize you know, people's usage of equipment to make sure that they're not at risk, then do you know what, that's why we do this job, isn't it? So thank you so much for sharing with that today. Thank you everyone for listening, and look out for the email with the recording and the offer afterwards. So enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye now.
Thank you, everybody.